In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Well, with 5 new coaches in the SEC and then another guy fired yesterday, all the air got sucked out of the room with all the coaching moves. We didn't get a chance to talk a lot about the actual games. We will do so now, starting with the Iron Bowl. Alabama, of course, punching its ticket to the SEC championship game with a 27-20 win over Auburn. It wasn't easy, though, as it never is at Jordan-Hare Stadium. The Crimson Tide more than 400 overall yards in that game, being able to get the win after a ferocious comeback by the Tigers. We'll dive into that and a lot more here on Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, we were joking yesterday that, hey, we don't have a lot of time to talk about the actual games that happened on Saturday and on Friday and even some on Thursday because of everything that happened. But the Iron Bowl in my place is a really good place to start because this is an Alabama team that lost their first game of the season to Florida State. And I think that not a lot of people that day would have pictured Alabama playing for the SEC championship, but here they are after that big win at Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, I want to touch on the news from this past weekend because I don't think in sport we have ever seen one conference have so much chaos going on at once to the point where you're forgetting about some of the games that were actually played. I mean, there was a span of 45 minutes where it just all happened on Sunday, and we're just like, okay, I mean, what's next? You know, like I'm just waiting in the next hour to see what's going to happen. But I mean, there was just so much to talk about yesterday. We really didn't get to talk about. I mean, we talked a little bit about the Iron Bowl, but all of these other games as well. The Iron Bowl is the best rivalry game this past weekend, and it usually is when it's at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I've always been a big proponent of when it's in Tuscaloosa. It doesn't really have that added edge because, I mean, this is no diss against Auburn by any means, but it's that underdog mentality. And usually when in my opinion, the Iron Bowls have a little bit more meaning when they're on the plains rather than in Tuscaloosa because I think Auburn has a better chance of winning. And I thought Auburn could have won this game. They won the yardage battle against Alabama. They just could not get over those 2 turnovers. One of them wasn't really Ashton Daniels' fault. And, I mean, it was just a tipped interception that – I mean, you could maybe make the argument that the ball came in a little bit too hot. I mean, he definitely zinged it in there. But the other one, just when your best player fumbles with 40 seconds to go trying to get 2 more yards, I mean, it hurts. But anyways, Alabama wins the Iron Bowl, and now they're in the SEC championship. Yep,
that's exactly right. 3rd straight win over Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium, 6th straight win in the Iron Bowl overall. It has felt like a rivalry game that, yes, while it is a rivalry and there's a lot of the cliches that get thrown out there about, taking the record books, out of the equation, it has been a rivalry game with the team that's better actually winning the football game, and the team that was favored actually won there as well. Depending on where you got the number, if you bet Alabama, you covered your spread, but barely. If you got it at 6, then you're sweating it out a little bit. If you got it at 5 or 5.5, it's a little bit of an easier win. And an opposite case for the Auburn Tigers, the other way around. If you bet Auburn getting the points, but I think this is a really good litmus test for Alabama as they move forward because every game from here on out, I expect to be very close. Of course, Alabama blew out Eastern Illinois before this, but the Iron Bowl, now the SEC Championship, and whatever games they play in the college football playoff, I think this game kind of bodes well for whatever is to come, for Alabama because they'll all be either neutral site games or games on their field.
Yeah, and I mean, the SEC Championship is going to be interesting to me because Georgia's going to want to get back at that Week 5 loss in Athens. And I mean, Georgia just played in Mercedes-Benz Stadium last week. I mean, I know they're in Georgia, but if this was like Texas A&M, so to speak, and they were just playing in Mercedes-Benz, they wouldn't have to travel far. I mean, you might as well just stay the whole week. But Georgia, obviously Athens being in Georgia. The thing about Alabama from this game, though, we've been talking about it for a few weeks now. Something is off with that offense.
Yes.
And the offense didn't really win them the game. I mean, if it weren't for one guy showing up and actually doing his job and Isaiah Horton scoring 3 touchdowns, he made 5 catches for a total of 35 yards. So, I mean, all you had to do is just give it to him in the red zone. If it weren't for him, I think Auburn wins this pretty handedly.
Yeah. This seems to me like a game, and you mentioned about how Alabama was outgained on the field. And a lot of times you don't necessarily see the teams that get outgained that much being able to win the game. But as you mentioned, Auburn shot themselves in the foot with those turnovers, and Alabama knows that all too well, being able to turn other teams over at a very high clip. But you mentioned it, Isaiah Horton. If you were to say an Alabama receiver was going to have a big game, the first player you'd probably go to is Ryan Williams. The second player.
Did he even get a target?
I'll go back and check the box score.
I don't think he got a target.
I'm not sure if he did or not. And that's another part of this whole situation that has seemed weird, seemed odd, and obviously can't go play by play. And we don't know the progression for Ty Simpson on every play he's been called, so we don't know if Ryan is the first. The first guy in the progression to be able to get those footballs, but to not even have a target to me is kind of wild. Let me see. He's not listed at all in the Alabama official box score. So I mean, he did not get a target there. So I found it really interesting that they were able to find Isaiah Horton, and maybe if you're looking at it glass half full, you're like, well, we found another weapon. It's Ryan Williams, it's Jeremy Bernard, and we have Isaiah Horton here. But if you're looking at it from the other perspective, you're like, this might make you seem a little nervous that his production has gone down the latter parts of the year.
I think that has to make you nervous because not only are you thinking about the rest of this year, but you got to be thinking about next year.
Yeah.
I mean, is he going to stay?
Right.
Obviously, there was just so much hype last year, and I feel like some of the hype might have been a little bit too much for a 17-year-old at the time to fully be able to grasp it, how good he was at the wide receiver position. And then coming into this year, that hype didn't dwindle at all. I mean, talking about, I remember him playing the new college football game and just talking about that and just being at 18, how good he actually is.
Right.
And then this season, it seems like Jeremy Bernard has really taken the next step to being wide receiver one. And that step that I think we all expected Ryan Williams to take, while Williams just regressed a little bit. So I'd be interested to see. I think the SEC championship is going to be a big telltale for me and what his plan is moving forward. Because, I mean, he is an in-state kid. He's right in our area down here in Mobile along the Gulf Coast. So, I mean, he's got Alabama ties. It would be interesting to me to see what Alabama does moving forward with him.
Right.
And if he doesn't get – if he goes – with no targets again for 2 straight games,
correct,
then you got to start having some more conversations.
You got to start worrying a little bit if you're Alabama, pulling back the box score from the previous time that they played in the Alabama-Georgia matchup. Even in that football game, he had 5 catches, I should say, with 43 yards, no touchdowns. Isaiah Horton also had a big game there as well, 5 catches. He had a touchdown in that game. But you might remember the breakout game for Ryan Williams last season was the Georgia game. That game was in Tuscaloosa. He goes off, has a great day, kind of his coming out party, so to speak. I know he had a great game the game before, but it's like, hey, SEC game under the bright lights in prime time. Ryan really went off there. So I wonder now with the stage once again bright again as they go to Mercedes-Benz if he's able to do it. But it is something to look out for because all season long Bama has not been able to run the ball with any kind of true efficiency. I know that they ran the ball decently in the Iron Bowl this past week. Ran for 158 yards. Jay Miller had 83 yards, and you had 40 yards essentially for Daniel Hill as well. So you're finding something on the ground, but it's not consistent enough and not nearly what we're used to seeing Alabama with guys like Mark Ingram and guys like Trent Richardson and guys like Eddie Lacy and several others. It's not the kind of running attack that we're used to seeing from Alabama, and I wonder if they can get that cleaned up as well.
Yeah, and I talked about it a few times where it just seems like the offensive line isn't playing up to the full potential, and I almost wonder if that's part of the reason why the run game hasn't been so good.
Right.
One of the more interesting things I thought from the Iron Bowl is how much Ty Simpson ran it. I know he had that big 20-yard, I believe it was a 25-yard run that got him right inside the 5.
Yep.
I mean, look, Ty Simpson, he didn't really play that well either. I mean, the whole offense did not play well against Auburn, and you can make the argument that Ashton Daniels on the other side was the best player in that game.
Yeah.
Putting up Diego Pavia-like numbers there, over 100 yards on the ground and 259 through the air. But I mean, if you're Alabama, you're teetering on the edge here. You're playing with fire. I know you've won these last 2 games. You beat Eastern Illinois. Good for you. You beat them pretty handedly. Again, good for you. Ty Simpson threw 2 picks in that game. That's not good. And then, I mean, don't get me wrong, Auburn's defense is good. There was a little bit of I would say a 6-quarter stretch from the entire Vanderbilt game through half of the Mercer game where it was like, uh-oh.
It looked shaky.
Yeah. You know, it looks like DJ Durkin can't do both.
Right.
And then they held Alabama to under 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. But, I mean, the one touchdown that stands out to me was the fourth down touchdown.
4th and 2,
to
Isaiah
that
Horton
one kind of iced it.
And really, to me, I put that also on a lot on Kalen DeBoer.
Yep.
He understands his team. He knows his team is not running the ball really well. And he also knows he can kick the field goal there. I know that there's been shaky, field goal kicking with this football team with Connor Salty. But he understands, okay, I have a good team and I can rely on my defense even if we don't get this 4th down. Scores a touchdown, as you said, to Isaiah Horton, who they kind of found. So even his numbers, even though he has 3 touchdowns, his overall numbers really don't blow you away. But their execution in the red zone was really, really high. And you mentioned Ty Simpson running the ball a lot more. But I do think that they leave themselves a little susceptible to what's ahead of them coming up in the college football playoff, which I do expect them to be in. Of course, we won't get that solidified for a couple of weeks. But I do expect, once we find out for sure what they look like on Saturday, then we can make some adjustments and make some assessments. But I think if you're an Alabama fan, you point to this Iron Bowl and say, we were fortunate enough to get away with the win at Jordan-Hare Stadium, even though it didn't look pretty.
Yeah, but I mean, I know Alabama fans are a little bit spoiled in a way with Nick Saban and all the national championships, but you still have to remember this is year 2 for Kalen DeBoer in the SEC.
Right.
And let me tell you something, Alabama fans. Your best team isn't this year. It's next year.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have a run game next year with good old E.J. Crowell running. He's going to – I tell you what, the amount of hype Ryan Williams had when he was 17 and him just making defenders look bad. Yep. I think EJ's going to do the same thing. Yeah. And we've gotten the opportunity to watch him basically in our backyard here the last few years.
Yeah. It's been so close, and he's up for all the major awards here in the state of Alabama. He will play his final high school football game on Thursday before he goes to Alabama. They'll play the state championship game against the Anniston Bulldogs. So really excited to see that. But you mentioned it, the fact that this team cannot run the ball, but still Kalen DeBoer having a lot of trust in his team. We talked about that 4th down play, 4th and 2, being able to not only get the first down yardage, but also be able to get the touchdown.
I figured it was 29 yards shorter than the last time we needed a touchdown here. So probably percentages were much more in our favor. But no, I feel like there's a confidence you have in the offense, to get the 2 yards. We didn't need to have a touchdown on that play, but we needed the 2 yards. And I think there's also a piece where backed up like that, you got confidence in your defense. And in that situation, you got a chance to score, you got a chance to get a stop, and you also got a chance to maybe get the ball back again. And obviously all those things, there's some things that don't work for you to be in that spot, and some things that do work for you to be in that spot to where you get 2 chances at it. So, again, just a lot of trust in our guys on both sides of the ball that we can get it done.
And next up, Alabama will face Georgia in the SEC championship game, a rematch of a game from before earlier this year. And I think it's the 10th time, maybe 13th time that these two teams have played, the 7th time that these two teams have played in the SEC championship game.
Stop me if you've heard this SEC championship matchup before.
It feels like it's been a carbon copy for the last few years. It's rivaling what Alabama-Florida had been for a very long time, through the 90s and through Steve Spurrier, and even into the 2000s when Nick Saban and Urban Meyer were going at it head-to-head. Georgia-Alabama seems to be that new rivalry that comes your way on Saturday at 3 o'clock Central Time. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Knoxville, Tennessee. We'll talk a little bit of football, but a lot of basketball as well with Sam Granville. Keep it here. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus, hour number 1 on a Tuesday. We are joined by our good friend Sam Granville. We made a promise on the front end before the break that we would talk a little football now that the football season is over, and obviously Tennessee not going to the college football playoff like they did a year ago, and to put salt in the wound, so to speak, losing to Diego Pavia and company. Let's just break this game down from an overall perspective. What this means for your average person that's there in Tennessee as a Tennessee football fan, the way that this season ended up wrapping up. Not only the loss to Vanderbilt, but the loss to Oklahoma before then. If you could put a bow on maybe the last month of football there in Vols Nation.
Yeah, I think this last game with Vandy just kind of summed up the season. You know, you see the potential, you see, okay, what this team could potentially be. What is it? You know, what does this season look like as a whole? You know, do we exceed all expectations? But then that loss to Vandy that just ruins anything, throws everything out the door that you thought, okay, we might be, you know, surpassing some of the projections from earlier in the season. You know, we hung around with Georgia. You know, besides a couple plays in the first half that went totally awry with Alabama, we kind of hung around with them as well. Oklahoma, you know, you're leading that game for most of the time. But then this loss to Vandy, that just kind of puts a bow on it, and you're like, okay, maybe we weren't at the top tier of the SEC like we thought we might have been. Maybe we weren't right there knocking on the door where we thought we might have been. So now there's going to be a lot of grumbling going into the offseason, no matter what happens. No matter if you get the ReliaQuest Bowl, the Gator Bowl, you know, the Music City Bowl, and you win by 30, that doesn't matter. The Vol fans don't care. All they care about is this loss to Vandy right now, and what do we do to going into next season to make sure that this doesn't happen again, to make sure that, okay, Vandy got us this 1 year, you know, this one down year for us, and this is a, you know, once-in-a-lifetime season for them. Next year, that's not going to be the case. You know, that's going to be kind of all the grumblings in the offseason, because believe me, it is going to be a long offseason here in Knoxville.
Sam, I think we talked a little bit last week about how, to put it lightly, Tennessee fans have not liked Diego Pavia ever since he stepped foot in Nashville. But you made national recognition this past weekend for the whole Diego Pavia brother incident where he ended up getting arrested. Can you kind of take us through what happened and what you saw there?
Yeah, that was an interesting situation, because right off the bat, you know, some of the security guards are talking to us and saying, okay, you know, we're already hearing, you know, the Pavias are coming. We've been given specific, you know, kind of guidelines as far as, okay, we need to make sure they know right off the bat, like, this isn't Nashville. We got to adhere to the rules here. We can't be hanging over the edges. We can't, you know, be throwing anything over the sides. We can't be sitting on the edges. We can't be standing up on, you know, in Tennessee, it's kind of like a brick structure. You know, everybody's got to stay behind this. That's all fans. Doesn't matter who you're related to or whatever. And right off the bat, there was a bit of pushback from the Pavia family, who, you know, they came in with a lot of swagger, and, you know, hey, we're about to run this state, and, you know, by their, you know, brother, by their son, you know, coming in and having himself a game, they did in fact back up, you know, that they are running the state right now. So, but the situation was definitely an interesting one, where you knew coming in, okay, you know, we've seen on national TV that this family likes to have some fun. They like to, you know, get a little rowdy. They like to talk their talk. So Tennessee, you know, the staff was saying right off the bat, like, hey, you know, we can have fun, we can say what we want, but we can't be doing anything that's going to put anybody else in danger, whether that's yourself, you know, whether that's us as the guards, whether that's the fans around you. So that was a situation which obviously did not pan out well for one of the Pavia brothers, who ended up getting arrested. But to their credit, you know, Diego had himself a game, and at the end of the day, they were the ones, besides the one brother who ended up in handcuffs, they were the ones having the cheers and the excitement leaving the stadium, leaving Neyland the other night.
Absolutely. Speaking of Pavia, let's talk about the quarterback situation here for both these guys, for Joey Aguilar and Diego Pavia, both on Saturday. And as you take a look at Joey Aguilar now that the regular season is done, of course, Saturday it looked like, just from a pure numbers perspective, you got, you know, almost 300 yards. Obviously, Diego went for more than 400 total there in the game. But you could talk about Joey Aguilar, from Saturday's perspective and what you've seen of him since he won the job in fall camp, and then now that we've been through a complete regular season?
I think as a whole, Vol fans love what Joey Aguilar provided for them this season. You know, when you have so many question marks coming into the year with Nico bailing at on the last day of spring camp and everything, for what Joey came in and did with we have no idea what he's going to do for us. I think he exceeded all expectations. And I think just as a person, Vol fans fell in love with him this year. He's a very humble guy. He's very down to earth. His family is a family that the Vol community has fallen in love with, that they've cherished with just one season with him here. If anything pans out with even more legal action hopping on with Diego Pavia, I'm sure the Vols would love to have Joey back for one more year. Yeah. Hey, even if that start the year and let our 5-star freshman come in later on, if that's how the quarterback battle ends up, Vol fans would love that. But more importantly, they would just love to see him have another opportunity with maybe a healthy team, with a healthy defense. You got a lot of these weapons coming back, and Braylon Staley, who's one of the best freshman receivers in the country, Deshaun Bishop, who next year will be a junior and one of the better running backs returning in the SEC. So they'd love to get one more year with Joey if possible. If not, hey, it's been a good run. We've loved you spending your senior year with us and giving us, something to root for when coming into the year. We didn't know just how bad or good we could be.
No question about it. Let's flip it over to basketball now. We will actually see a matchup that we saw on the gridiron between two teams that wear the orange. Of course, you have Tennessee and Syracuse. We saw it there in football. Now switching over to basketball in the ACC SEC Challenge. What do you make of this unique matchup here between two really proud basketball programs?
Yeah, I think anytime you have to go up to Syracuse, that's a tough battle. It doesn't matter if it's, one of the great Jim Boeheim teams or if it's just, any other year Syracuse. There's a lot of pride in that, in that program. There's a lot of pride in just wearing those colors. So anytime you go on the road, no matter how good they are, that's going to be a tough test, especially early on in the season. They've got, you just look at the record and it's 4-3, but you have to see they played three brutal matchups back to back to back with Houston, with Kansas, and then Iowa State, all top 10, level teams right there early on in the season. So Syracuse hanging around with them. They played Houston to overtime, the same team that the Vols pulled out a tough, tight victory over. And they played Kansas within 10 points as well. So that's going to be a tough battle. This might not be the Syracuse of old. It might not be the we're going to play zone the whole time and clog things up and be more talented and longer and play tougher on defense. But it looks like a Syracuse bunch that we'll probably see come March. Depends on how well they can progress. But I would not be surprised if this team is, a top 5-6 seed heading into the tournament come March, and that's exactly where the Vols think they can be, if not, a good deal higher.
I thought you were talking about Syracuse being a top 6 seed there for a second. I was like, I don't know. I mean, they did hang around with Houston, and I'm a devoted Syracuse Orange. Back in the good days when they're actually good and the dome would actually sell out. But I mean, you were kind of talking about it a little bit. When people actually show up to the games. Now I know there's a big snowstorm up there going on right now, so it might be a little bit of trouble getting to the game here tonight. But usually this early in the season, you don't see two teams that play each other with a common opponent already, and that being Houston and Kansas as well. Now that I'm just realizing that. I know Rick Barnes talked a little bit about you can't really pull the tape on anybody because you just played and you just got back from Vegas. But what do you expect to see out of this Tennessee team tonight heading up to Syracuse?
I think they're going to stick to the plan of what's worked for them so far this season, and that's rely on the front court. Mm-hmm. You're going to have Jacoby Gillespie, who's who is the best player on your team right now. Nate, of course, with the highest NBA upside, but Jacoby is the best college basketball player on this team this year. He's if there's going to be a guy that helps lead you to an Elite Eight, a Final Four, it's going to be Jacoby and everything that he can do. And as long as he stays healthy, I think the Vols have a great chance of making a run in the tournament. But the front court is what they, is going to be their strong suit this season coming into SEC play. The depth of that front court is really incredible. When you got Cade Phillips as a starter and Felix Akpara as a starter, and they're, two of your, I would just say, your least talented scorers in the front court, but maybe your best shot blockers. And then you got JP Estrella coming off the bench, Jalen Carey coming off the bench, and the true freshman, and Dwayne Brown, that he's just someone who Rick Barnes has said all season, he's been our biggest surprise when a true freshman can come in here and play some considerable minutes and get you, off of a 5, 6, 10 minutes, and he's already there with like 6 points and 7 rebounds. That's the best you can do with your 5th best forward. So the front court is going to be something that they're going to rely on. And of course, the 3-and-D action from guys like Bishop Boswell, who really has been playing a big role, especially in that win against Houston. He kind of willed them to victory against Houston. But the front court is certainly what the Vols are going to rely on to get a win tonight and really throughout this entirety of the season.
Yeah, really important, really interesting non-conference matchup there on the road. We got a chance to hear from Rick Barnes previewing the Orange.
No, but now we have enough film. Obviously, we just came out of a tournament where they played. I think they had the toughest schedule out in Vegas. I mean, 3 of the hardest games, and they competed at an extremely high level. Totally different team, and again, I'm impressed with Coach Autry and what he's doing, how he's again putting this team together. And they took Houston to overtime, and they're a good basketball team. And they're getting back just like we have. I'm sure they cleaned up some things, like we had to clean up some things, maybe added a couple things here or there. But I think they probably have a pretty good beat on us, and we feel like we'll probably have a pretty good beat on them. But you'll still have to make some adjustments as we go through the game.
Sam, these two teams played last year in Knoxville, and the game was not close at all. Do you expect it to be a little bit closer this time around? I think Tennessee's a 7.5-point favorite on the road.
I do. I think obviously home court advantage at the college level, whether that's football or basketball, it certainly plays a lot bigger difference than maybe in the NBA. And I do think that this team is still trying to figure things out. Any given night you could have the team catch fire, and then next thing you know, that game that around a 6-7 point game turns into a 15 to 20 point game. But I do think it'll be a close battle, and I don't care if it's a 3-point win or a 20-point win. They're going to consider this a quality victory if they can go on the road this early in the season. Well, they're still trying to figure out the roles for their guys, still trying to figure out who's the key players in our rotation, who can move the ball up and down the court when Jacoby is not the primary ball handler. I think at this time of year, if you can go on the road, up into a snowstorm, even though you're playing indoors, get a win in a place like Syracuse, you're going to call that a quality win. And I don't think it's going to be, a 20, 30-point victory. I could see it, sticking to around a 10, 12-point finish, if it comes down to free throws or whatever. But I think it'll be a little bit closer.
Don't say the words free throws.
Free throws.
You're talking about the Syracuse Orange.
Free throws are a 4-letter word when it comes to Syracuse basketball, especially in the early parts of the season. Patrick will be the first one to tell you that.
That Houston game made me want to just rip my eyes out.
It was like, 17
missed free throws, and it took Houston to overtime. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
I think Vols fans wanted to come down free throws again, and same production there at home. Before I let you go here, Sam, one more quick football thing I had to do with bowl projections. So it looks like Tennessee's either projected to go to the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, the Music City Bowl close by there in Nashville, or the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte. If you're having your pick about where you're going to go cover this Vols team in their postseason game, where are you picking?
Well, a lot goes into play here because you're talking about where are we going to get the most Vol fans, what's going to be the most exciting matchup and scenery, and then also, okay, do I get to see my family over the holidays and stuff like that? Yeah. So when you start weighing in all the different scenarios, different things come in play, and that of course is the life of being a sports journalist and covering, football and basketball and everything during the holidays. But I think Vol fans would love it to be, in Music City just so they have that close proximity. I think a lot of the projections right now have been honing in on that Gator Bowl. So really, and for me, I still just can't get over the fact that the Mayo Bowl is a thing and that coaches, dump the mayo on their head. But
I got to see Neil Brown get mayo dumped on him.
Can't have Coach Heupel ever hear this from me, but I would love to see Coach Heupel dunked in a bowl of mayo. So that would be fun just for that sake.
Absolutely, that's exactly the outcome I'm rooting for. That Duke's Mayo Bowl, be able to get out there. But no, you're absolutely right. It is a really trying time trying to balance a whole bunch of worlds: the football world, the family world, as well as the basketball world as well. And we appreciate you taking time out for us here on Southeast Sports Plus today.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Absolutely. Sam Granville joining us from Knoxville. Of course, not the season that they wanted overall. They got a chance, though, to make up for it on the basketball court tonight. I think it's one of the more compelling matchups in the ACC-SEC Challenge.
Yeah, I mean, these are two programs that, I mean, again, Syracuse, they haven't been that good ever since. I would go back to 2016 was really the last big year for Syracuse. I know that they had that nice run in 2021, but they're a team that's trying to get back. And I think this year the talent is there. It's just a big year for Coach Autry because it's like, okay, you finally have your guys. You finally have talent.
Right.
Now, can you coach them to victory? But again, if it comes down to free throws tonight, I mean, in Syracuse's dictionary, they can't even be called free throws anymore.
Right. No, they're not free.
They are not free by any means.
They seem laborious. They seem like you got to do a lot of work to be able to get those in there. We'll see how it all shakes out tonight there in Syracuse. Meanwhile, coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we keep it on the hardwood as SEC teams battle ACC teams in the big challenge coming up tonight. And SEC Network star Paul Feinbaum making a big announcement as it relates to his career off the field and away from the microphone. We'll have that and more next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, our number one continues here on this Tuesday, and really proud to welcome back our good friend Kevin Holden. He was awesome with us last time, and we expect it once again here today as we break down a really interesting slate in the world of college basketball. Of course, something that we have been looking forward to since the season tipped off. It's the ACC-SEC Challenge. Of course, the SEC last year put 14 teams in the NCAA tournament, a overall record. But getting a real tough challenge here was some of the cream of the crop in the ACC. Case in point, the defending national champion Florida Gators taking on the Duke Blue Devils. Kevin, I love this matchup. Where it sits on the calendar, obviously no football to interfere with it. What do you make here of this matchup as the Duke Blue Devils take on the champs?
Look, I know that teams change from year to year, and I know that all these Duke freshmen that we see here are not the same Duke freshmen that were here, a year ago. But the difference, though, is this, I think, was a game that Duke would have wanted to play in April in San Antonio as opposed to, in December. And that's, to me, that means something to the program, right? That's something that John Shire and the returning players can impart, like this is, if they want to, play for a national championship, well, there you go. That's the team that'll, that's the measuring stick. And it was a year ago. Both teams are different, but that's at least the matchup that was still fresh in some minds. When Florida played on that last day and Duke was eliminated, one round before in the Final Four. So it's big in that way, and it's also. I mean, nobody that I have seen in college basketball tests their players the way Duke does in terms of the opponents, in terms of the location, in terms of the stages. I think that this is one of the biggest tests that they'll face. And again, you said it. It's perfectly placed on the schedule. Conference play is just over there, and they've had a chance to warm up now with the first 6 or 7 games of the year. This is perfect. This is your litmus test. You will learn about your team in this game.
Kevin, I think it was about 1 month ago around this time in the day when I asked you, I was like, is Cam Boozer just Cooper Flagg 2.0, just right back 1 year after? Now that we're a month into the season and seeing what he did against a good Arkansas team on Thanksgiving, what have you made of the freshman so far this year?
Yeah, so when we talked that first time about this a month ago, he had just dropped all those points and rebounds. It was more than 20 points, more than 20 rebounds against Tennessee in an exhibition. And I thought, okay, ton of factors there, right? Like, it's an exhibition. Tennessee's like, okay, great, have your points, have your rebounds. I figured he was a very good player, but I didn't know if he was one of the best in the country. And now that we've seen, a handful of regular season games, yeah, I think he's one of the best players in the country. he is. What I think is interesting about Cam Boozer is obviously the point totals are there, but John Shire has spent, going back to ACC media days, he has spent a lot of time hammering home what he calls the other 98%, which is what we all care about and what we watch on the news at night and on our sports shows are the highlights, the three-pointers and the dunks. But there's so much else that goes into winning a basketball game. So going back to your Cooper Flagg comparison, where Cooper Flagg was the best in the country was all that other stuff. He could score, but he could do so many other things, fundamental things that helped his teammates and, put them in better position. And Cam Boozer's becoming that player too. I think the scoring is a little higher than it was for Flagg at this point, but the other parts are still developing for him. But yeah, you're talking about one of the best in the country, and it's just like they grew him in a lab and just plugged him right in, like, oh, Cooper's gone. Here's the next one. Here's Cam Boozer.
Absolutely. This game is at Cameron Indoor, and what I love about these home and home matchups in this specific ACC-SEC challenge is the fact that you do get a true home court environment. I like a lot of these neutral site games that played at Madison Square Garden, games that are played at United Center there in Chicago. How important is this game to be at Duke, and what do you expect it to be like? I know it's not an ACC game. Of course, the Baby Blues not in town, but it is the defending champions that are in. Do you expect that atmosphere to match what we're seeing as far as on paper with these two teams on the court?
I really do expect it to be peak intensity from a noise and an intimidation part. I got to say that in sports, you hear about all of these iconic venues and home places that you think are going to be huge advantages. Lambeau Field in football because of the temperature and all that. Like, some of those I feel are good and some of those are extremely overrated. And then the first time I walked into Cameron Indoor to cover a game, I've been at this job about a year, so my first game there was early January of this year. And wow. Okay, so let me explain the way this works, right? Like, for us working, watching games, covering games, you have a seat at press row, as you know, no matter where you are in the country. At Cameron Indoor, that seat at press row has about that much room between where you are and where the fans are. And I have a video of fans, like, doing the Cameron crazies are like right here, like right over my shoulder, jumping up and down and doing all this crazy stuff. They were close enough that when a player walked by, they would reach over my shoulder to high five the player. Dude, it's incredible. And but what they've done is maintained the 1949-ness of of the interior of the arena. Obviously, some of the other stuff has progressed through the decades, but the core of that gym still feels like a television movie. It still feels like you're going back in time. So it is, again, to say all that, to say it is a massive disadvantage for the opposition, because there is no place I've ever covered college basketball that feels or sounds like Pete Cameron Indoor, and Florida's going to learn that tonight.
Absolutely. John Shire got a chance to speak about his superstar in Cam Boozer and maybe some of the things you will see out of him tonight.
He's been so coachable from day one. You're lucky when you're coaching a guy where he's harder on himself than anybody else could be. And, we actually were talking earlier. I mean, what he's done has been incredible. I think him and I both know there's been more there, as crazy as that sounds. And I still think there's a lot more there. And he's, for me, the biggest difference, though, for a freshman is learning how to play through contact and the decision-making, the decisiveness. He can do so many different things. Obviously, he's shown he can shoot the ball from three, right? He can create his own shot. But I thought tonight he was a great connector for us with quick decisions, putting pressure on the defense, and then really opening up a lot for other guys to drive, shoot, make plays as well.
Kevin, this is going to be Duke's second straight game against an SEC opponent. They played another pretty good team in Arkansas on Thanksgiving. What did you make out of the Blue Devils' performance in Chicago?
I think they're an improved team over where they were in the first couple of games to start the year. And it's the way the schedule builds up, right? You face the Western Carolina-type opponents early on as you're beginning to round into form. I think John Shire's goal was to know what he had and how the rotations would look and how the playing time would divvy up before they got to conference play. And what you started to see against Arkansas was not just a group of talented individuals, but a team that understood playing together, that the roles are beginning to be defined. They're starting to come together. And Florida's going to be another one of those, win or lose. I think he's starting to understand exactly how everybody fits into the different pieces of the puzzle. It's a great time of year because these games only get more intense and they only mean more as they get into conference play. But yeah, that Arkansas game told me that, not that it's a shock. John Shire's an organized guy, but he's, that game plan is in stage 2 or 3. It's taken off.
For those that aren't in and around that Raleigh area, they're in North Carolina. Of course, at this time of year, we're talking about big basketball games, but the football team is playing in an ACC championship game there at the end of the week. What's it been like over there for those that wear that Duke blue, and just the overall sense of where athletics stand with the Blue Devils?
All right, so I got to go back to last Monday. Is the perfect story that will fit this, what's going on here. Last Monday, Manny Diaz had his last regular season press conference. On Mondays, Manny Diaz would talk about the upcoming opponent. He would field a variety of questions, no different this past Monday. And somebody said to him, like 2/3 of the way through, so have you talked with your team about the ACC championship game? And he's like, no. Like, we haven't said a word about it. Yeah, he goes, too many things have to happen. The stars have, this is a direct quote.
Right.
The stars have to align. The octopus has to pick the Duke hat. Like, that was his line. Like, he's like, 20 things have to happen that are not under his control. And so then Saturday night, after they had beaten Wake Forest, there's a little clip of it on Twitter. He says to his guys, he's like, so Practice Sunday? Nah, maybe not. But stay by your phones just in case. And then, of course, SMU misses a field goal so that Cal wins, and the Stars did align, and the Octopus did pick the Duke hat, and here they are. So it's just a weird, wild, like, bonus week for everybody involved. It's cool for us. We get to go to Charlotte on Saturday, but I do think it's healthier for the university. Because obviously Duke basketball just casts a shadow over everything else.
Yeah.
It's just a massive entity. But football now has a 9-win season and an ACC football championship game appearance in the back-to-back years. So it's not just a one-off thing. I think Manny Diaz is building something that can be consistent there.
Kevin, I know some people are going to look at this ACC championship game and be like, how in the world is a 5-loss team in the ACC championship? And honestly, I thought about that for a second being an ACC guy. I'm like, man, we go from Clemson a few years ago, just rolling everybody to, just pure chaos. But do you think there's any chance that if Duke were to win this game over Virginia that they'd make the college football playoff, or do you think it's going to be 2 G5 teams?
Yeah, I don't see it happening. I just don't. And it's a little bit unfortunate because it would be a nice reward for them because they did exactly what they were supposed to do, right? What was in front of them was to win the ACC, and they're going to do, in this scenario, they do that. Then they would say, all right, now what? Give us what we're going to get. But I just look, it's chaotic enough. But you throw a 5-loss Duke team into the mix. Like, it is the craziest thing in the world this time of year because suddenly James Madison and Tulane really care about the ACC championship game because it affects what happens to them in their postseason. It's one of the coolest things I think about college football. One of the wildest is, like, when SMU played Cal, that game that got Duke into it, we were riveted. We were in the middle of a show here, and no one could work. We were watching them kick that last field goal and jumping around like we were players. Like, it's a wild time. But no, to answer the question, I think it improves their bowl standing a little, but no, I don't think they're a playoff team.
Absolutely. Kevin, we appreciate your insight so much. We'll see you again very, very soon. By the way, we'll break down another big matchup here in the ACC SEC Challenge.
Can't wait. I'll just stay right here if it's all right. I've got some crackers and some soda over here. I'll just hang out.
I love
Sounds
it.
good.
Hey, hang tight there. We'll see you again coming up tomorrow. Kevin Holden joining us from Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a big week there in the Tar Heel State. Of course, you have basketball in the huge game today with the Duke Blue Devils facing off against Florida, and then at the end of the week you got the Blue Devils. Football.
I'm still shocked that Duke is in the ACC championship. I mean, he talked about the Stars had to align, and yeah, they did. But while we're talking ACC here real quick, I saw the ACC network is just replaying the Miami Notre Dame game all day for the next few days to try to give Miami some propaganda. But I mean, there is a real chance that the ACC gets 0 teams in the college football playoff, which is just crazy.
Absolutely insane. We are hours away from the college football playoff committee rankings. Lots of eyes will be on the Miami situation, the Notre Dame situation, of course, Texas A&M after losing to Texas. So much to talk about there as it relates to what comes ahead for the college football playoff committee rankings. We will wrap up our number 1 coming up next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, closing up hour number 1. It's one of our favorite staples on this show coming up next year. We have a lot to react to, but it's our overreactions. We use the word overreactions because we want you to understand that these are overreactions, and I'll say that to preface mine. But this is something that I love to do. You love to do. Now that the regular season is over, give me some of your overreactions.
Oh, you want me to go first?
I'll go
Why
first.
don't you go ahead first?
All right, I'll go first.
There we go.
First. All right, my first overreaction: the new SEC coach, the first one that'll take his team to the college football playoff. I'm taking Lane Kiffin out of this because he's a reigning SEC coach. The first new coach will be Alex Golesh. I think the other coaches that are coming into this league, think about guys like John Summerall, think about guys like Pete Golding, who's now the permanent coach. I just think that they're a little too far away. I think Golesh, immediate impact there.
Okay.
However, that said, quietly, out of all of this, because Lane Kiffin sucked out all the air out of all this, quietly, Ryan Silverfield at Arkansas will build a beast.
Not only will, he already is.
That's the thing. Yes.
Like,
I mean,
he's already flipped so many.
Yes.
In state as well.
Yep. And I think that the money will be there, obviously, with the families, the well-connected families that are a part of that football program. I think Arkansas, I'm not saying it's going to be what Bobby Petrino had it a while back, but I'm saying I could easily see consistent 8, 9, maybe 10 wins and flirting with the college football playoff for the next 5 years, at least the better part of the next 5 years. And flip the basketball, I got the SEC winning the SEC Men's Basketball Challenge. Maybe a little different on the women's side. I think the top end of the women's side maybe a little bit deeper. I think the SEC men win as well. Not enough time to get into the individual breakdowns, but I'll break those down for you a little bit later on. But the SEC gets more wins than the ACC.
That's very interesting. I think the SEC does, but I think maybe by 1. I think it's going to be neck and neck. I mean, the ACC last year, it was just – I mean, the ACC's been on the downfall for the last few years when it comes to not only football but basketball as well. But I think this is the year that the ACC starts to try to reclaim that top-tier status. But all right, here we go. Lane Kiffin is that type of guy that Taylor Swift always sings about because the more and more I hear all of those songs and the more and more I see Lane Kiffin's actions, I'm just like, man, that dude loves the spotlight.
He loves attention.
He loves trolling. And I don't know. I mean, Ole Miss is going to have to find someone to put out an album. I mean, maybe.
I'm sure there's some songwriters down there in Ole Miss.
Yeah,
there's some great writers over there. I mean, Ole Miss is Mississippi. The state of Mississippi is known for great writing. They have Hemingway is from down there. There's a lot of great overall writers. I think there's somebody who could write, whether it's songwrite or write poems about Lane Kiffin's time.
I would love to just. Maybe, the yoga instructors all come together and sing a song. Maybe Keith Carter writes a song about Lane Kiffin.
Keith Carter's verse would be hilarious.
Oh, man, it would be hilarious. But, yeah, he's definitely the type of guy that Taylor Swift sings about. Alabama is suspect, and that's because their offense just can't do anything for me. I mean, you scored 56 points against Eastern Illinois, but you also threw 2 interceptions, and you did not look good against Oklahoma, and you didn't look good against Auburn. And it feels like ever since that South Carolina game, it's just been a little bit suspect.
Yep.
And I don't care if at this point I sound like a broken record. Diego Pavia needs to win the Heisman
100%.
Because he is – I know it's the best player in college football, but he is the best player in college football.
That's right.
He's the most valuable player in college football. I mean, you look at Julian Sam. We talked about this yesterday. He's not even the best player on his own offense. And then Fernando Mendoza is a product of the system because Curtis Rourke did pretty much the same thing last year.
Yep.
But last year's Heisman was over from the beginning because it was always going to be Travis Hunter's. But Diego Pavia, he needs to win the Heisman or I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think he is the best player, and I think we probably should redefine what that Heisman Trophy is to give it to the most valuable guy in college football, and that's Diego. Our number 2 coming up next.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Well, back on September 29th, SEC Radio Network star Paul Feinbaum told Clay Travis with Outkick that he was thinking about possibly running for the vacant Senate seat from Tommy Tuberville in representation for United States Senate out of Alabama. Well, today he put an end to the very quick speculation that he will run for that Senate seat, saying that he will not run. I will quote him from our friends at WIAT. Have been deeply moved by so many people in Alabama who've reached out, encouraging me to run for the United States Senate. It's been a gratifying and rewarding experience. I am also appreciative of my bosses at ESPN for allowing me to explore this opportunity, but it's time to devote my full attention to something everyone in Alabama can agree upon: our love for college football. Kind of put it perfectly. Patrick, you and I at the time, we spoke with our news anchor, Peter Albrecht, and Pete, he's been great with both news and sports, and just in the divide there, because he's covered it for a very long time. And he even mentioned then that it was going to be hard for Tommy Tuberville, for Paul Feinbaum, to do all the adequate things to be able to raise the money and to be able to do all the things you need to do to make the Senate seat run happen. It just felt like it was kind of late in the process.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say, is what one of the things I think Peter did say was, I mean, hey, it's kind of late for this. I wonder if he's pulling back because of that, and maybe next year he'll try maybe on a different schedule.
Right.
I don't know. From what it sounds, it's like, okay, I wanted to explore this a little bit. Maybe this isn't actually right. I like what I'm doing here, talking sports, and that I explored the option, but I'm going to go back to what I like to do. So I'd be interested in that maybe in the future, but I don't know. It just feels so interesting to me that all these sports people are starting to run for positions in the government. I mean,
That's right.
In Alabama as well. I mean, you got A.J. McCarron, too, running for lieutenant governor.
Yeah. A.J. McCarron running for lieutenant governor. Of course, Tommy Tuberville, the reason why that his Senate seat will be vacant is because he's running for Alabama governor, and large speculation is that he will win that vote as well. So we have a lot of sports figures kind of interjecting themselves into politics, and it's nothing new. We've seen this for a long time, but we're now seeing it. I think it's a little bit more in your face now. One of the things that Peter did say was the fact that these guys are celebrities, and they can use the platform that they built in sports and use that to parlay into the ballot box as well. And I think that Paul Feinbaum probably talked to a few people that said, hey, just by the mere fact of people seeing you on the ballot, you would probably be able to get some requisite votes. But he is a polarizing figure there as well, because I think that if you talk about guys like A.J. McCarron, you talk about guys like Tommy Tuberville. I mean, Tuberville's been in politics for a really long time now. I think a lot of people kind of see him now more as a politician than remember him as the head football coach if you were born at a certain time. But to me, Paul Feinbaum there was so much that is going well for him in the sports world. I mean, the Paul Feinbaum show is doing absolutely great. Then he's also on SEC Nation, being able to cover those college football games. He does a lot of college basketball as well. To me, it would just feel like a weird time to try to step into politics unless you just absolutely, really, really, really wanted to change some things in the world of politics that a senator can change. I just don't know if he had that pull.
Well, I tell you what, there's one thing for certain, and it's that he wouldn't be leaving because there's nothing to talk about.
Oh,
because,
for sure.
I mean,
yeah.
after,
yes.
with everything that has gone on in the SEC in the last, I'd say, honestly, since I got here in May.
Yeah.
I'd go back to that.
Right.
I mean, there's just been nothing but pure chaos. But I go back to the funny thing about it. If A.J. McCarron were to win and Tommy Tuberville were to win the governor's spot, you'd have that Iron Bowl at the top there with Alabama, Auburn. And it just – sorry, I had to interject that.
I love it. No,
I just think it's funny. I mean, that is good for the state. You know, you got both sides there.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that if you had a lieutenant governor and a governor sitting on the opposite sides of the Iron Bowl,
I can only imagine
and everything else.
That's what I was about to say. I can only imagine the type of bets that would go on there.
Yeah, it'd be insane. It'd be really fun though too. But Paul Feinbaum staying exactly where he is, right there in the seat for the Paul Feinbaum Show. And of course, it's still at the same times on Monday to Friday there on the SEC Network, and of course on SEC Radio there as well. And then SEC Nation, which is a really awesome thing. And then First Take, which he also does. He comes in and does little segments there. There was a little consternation, I know, at the beginning when he got removed from his ESPN platforms, and I think it was much ado about nothing in that whole situation. But no, he will be staying put there in the SEC and one of the voices of the conference. Speaking of this conference, and as you mentioned, if he did leave, it wouldn't be because there's not a lot to talk about, because we had 5 new coaches hired all on Sunday, and then another one hired on Monday as Kentucky filled their vacancy as well. Let's talk Ryan Silverfield. I know I mentioned this in our overreactions to close out the first hour. He is the new head coach at Arkansas, and I feel like out of all of the coaching moves, Lane Kiffin obviously took the most airwaves.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I think Auburn, because Alex Golesh came in, and then John Summerall, just because of where Auburn and Florida were going to go for their head coaches, probably were number 2 versus number 3, as far as the overall national attention. I feel like Ryan Silverfield kind of got left out in the dust there at Arkansas, even though Arkansas was the first job to come open.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas was the first job in all of college football to come open, right? That was before Virginia Tech and UCLA.
Right.
Yeah,
first in the SEC for sure. I have to go back and timestamp it, but I think they were about the same time.
Yeah, definitely back in September. And I mean, you look back at the whole Sam Pittman situation, you almost had to make a move after that Notre Dame game. I feel like Ryan Silverfield's a little interesting for this Arkansas program because he wasn't really the name that we had heard a little bit of a unconfirmed report about a month ago that, hey, you know, he's talking to his Memphis team about maybe taking the Arkansas job.
Right.
But I don't think there was much truth to that at the time. I mean, Memphis did kind of come out and lay an egg against, I believe it was Tulane.
Yeah, the next week or the week after.
The next week. And it's like, I mean, you're right in the middle of a CFP push, American push. I mean, it's the American takeover in the SEC right now. And I'll be interested to see how this one works out for Arkansas. He wasn't the guy that I really thought they were going to go after.
Right.
I thought Matt Campbell might have been a little bit of a better fit. He already has P4 coaching experience. But, I mean, what Ryan Silverfield's done at Memphis, I mean, 2 10-win seasons. He's 4-0 in a bowl game. He's won at least 6 games every year. Got Memphis to 8-4 this year. And, I mean, we talked about it with Mike Sadie out of Memphis.
Yeah.
Memphis was trying to get into the Big 12, and the Big 12 was just saying no.
Absolutely.
So I think at this point he's like, all right, I tried all I could do getting Memphis into a Power 4 conference. It just wasn't going to work out, but I want to coach at a Power 4 conference, and I felt like this might have been the best opportunity for him.
Yeah, and he had the track record because he beat teams that were in the Power 4, including Arkansas, when he beat them there. I think the game was over in Memphis. So, no, he has the track record for sure. And I think with Arkansas, we have talked about this with our friends that are in the Razorback State, that Arkansas has enough money. It's now, will they dole it out from a resource standpoint to be able to put the Hogs in the best position from an NIL standpoint. I think that if you're Arkansas and if you're Ryan Silverfield, you would have to think that there has been some assurances that he'd be able to get what he would need to be able to keep this team atop or at least competitive from an NIL perspective to be able to get the guys that he wants there in Fayetteville.
Look, the majority of the 3-star, 4-star, and definitely all of the 5-star recruits that were in Arkansas were leaving the state.
Yeah.
And we've already seen in the short amount of time, I mean, it's been, I don't know, 48 hours since he was hired.
Yeah.
we've seen so many in-state commitments flip to Arkansas.
Yep.
I mean, these 3-4 stars. So there is something brewing there in Fayetteville. But I think you have to give him at least this next season.
Yes,
I
for
mean,
sure. Yeah.
You make a bowl game in this next season, that's a win.
Right.
And then then you can start shooting for the stars if you're Arkansas. I think Razorback fans just want some sort of consistency.
Yes.
I mean, and to be on the other side of those close games.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we will ever see a better 2-10 team.
No,
than the Arkansas team.
Not
this
at
year.
all.
I mean, there's just no way.
Yes, Bill Parcells is famous for saying you are what your record is. I think that almost applies to everybody but Arkansas, because Arkansas to me was a team that probably should have won at least 5-6. This team should have been bowling, and if they played their best all season long, they'd be flirting with the college football playoff spot. I would say 8, 9, 10 wins.
I think this is my opinion, and this is an SEC show, so I'm going to make a comparison. Kentucky's record should have been what Arkansas's was this year, 2-10. I mean, some of those wins were fluky wins that it's just like, okay, I mean, you come out here and you just dominate Florida. Like, where did this come from?
Right.
And then you get blown out by Louisville, making you like, okay, I mean, how are you a SEC team at this point?
Right.
Whereas Arkansas, I mean, 1, 2, I think they ended with 6 one-possession games this year.
Right.
And they lost all of them.
Lost every single one of them.
And I think they only had a point differential of like minus 20.
Right.
I mean, it's just shocking.
Yeah, and you could tell the offense was there. The defense caught up towards the end of the season, but it was a little, too late.
Yeah.
One of the things about Coach Silverfield is he's not afraid to yak a little bit. Yeah, talk a little bit of trash. I found it really interesting with the way that these coaches are. And I think a lot of us put too much on winning the press conference and doing the thing that makes the fan base go wild. And I think even if you go back to Nick Saban's press conference at Alabama, one of the first things that he said at the time was like, hey, we're not going to talk about what we're going to do. We're talking about how we're going to do it. And how we're going to do it is kind of boring, because you talk about process, you talk about day in and day out, and you talk about just the mundane things to get your program where you need it to be. It's a lot more methodical. Some coaches come out and they're just rah, 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 rah. Silverfield hasn't had his initial press conference yet. However, earlier this season, he wasn't afraid to step in a little bit as it relates to Kirby Smart.
Sure, we do this all the time, but generally on a Sunday afternoon when we meet with the team, we do 2 things, and we always start off with not our standard. We always start with a negative, and the not our standard is Georgia wide receiver, right, arrested for driving 900 miles per hour over the speed limit, right? That's a weekly occurrence. So that's one of those, like, we'll show.
I forgot about
that. I mean, just straight, and he probably did it for the laughs, and he got the laughs there. I just found it hilarious that he'll probably need to be this way for Arkansas to make those headlines, especially sharing that same conference as Lane Kiffin, who's known to create some headlines there himself. But I think this is a breath of fresh air for the SEC. And of course, if you can needle some of your rivals, and I never considered Arkansas and Georgia a rivalry, but if you can needle some of your rivals,
I'm looking right now to see if they play next year.
Oh yeah, that would be entertaining. And if because obviously the SEC is going to the 9-game conference schedule, so both teams have their 3 permanent conference teams, or the annual conference games.
They host Georgia next year.
They host Georgia, so that'll be interesting.
Kirby's going to be asked about that.
Oh, no question. They'll play that. They'll play it for Kirby and say, hey, this is the program that you've created, and. What I like about Silverfield, and kind of like what I like about all these hires, is that they're all their own guy. You mentioned that there's kind of a swarm right now from the American Conference to the SEC. We've seen different coaches make that move from the G5 to the SEC. But what I like about all of them, that they all seem to be a little bit different. Silverfield seems to be a little bit of fiery. John Summerall seems to be straight-laced, hard-nosed. Right. Alex Golish, he's the quote-unquote offensive genius. He's the guy that's going to bring the high-powered offenses, and he's got a good story, but he's not as boisterous as some of these other guys. But it looks like Silverfield's going to make up for all that with the way he talks.
And the recruiting is already starting to back it up, but I just think you got to lay the groundwork here. And I wouldn't be surprised, though, if I know I said, hey, just get to a bowl game first.
Yeah.
But I mean, with how close all those games were, I really wouldn't be surprised if he just, flipped the script and Arkansas is 8-4 next year.
Right. And just like as you mentioned, because there's so many one-possession games, these games are won now in the margins. It's not like he's got to overhaul much of anything. Now, of course, he's got to keep a lot of those players, but as you mentioned, he's already winning in those recruiting battles. Can he keep those guys on board? I find the Arkansas situation really interesting, and I wasn't kidding when I said I think this is the team that's going to make that big turnaround next year, and they'll do so quietly because they won't have the pressure. This will be a team that everybody remembers has 2 wins, so there won't be that pressure to hey, you got to make the college football playoff next year. And without that pressure, that's when I think that they'll find the brightness.
I wonder, this might be kind of overshooting a little bit. I wonder if they're going to be what Vandy was last year.
Yeah.
That just quiet. Nobody's talking about you. I mean, I just talked about how they host Georgia next year. They host LSU. They go to Auburn. They go to Vanderbilt. I mean, you look at the out-of-conference, Utah is the toughest one. You're going over there.
Right.
But, I mean, if that Georgia game's early in the year, that's probably as close as you're going to get to Vanderbilt, Alabama last year.
Exactly.
That could be the one that's like, oh, maybe there's something brewing over there in Fayetteville.
Yep.
But right now it's just snowing.
Yeah,
cold.
Exactly. A lot of snow, a lot of cold for them. Hogs fell to Mizzou in their last matchup, so ended up going 0 for the SEC this past year, and rough overall. But I do see this team coming back there. You see the final score, 31-17. So obviously no bowling for this team, and Missouri had a lot to play for as well going into this upcoming year. But I'm really interested to see what Ryan Silverfield does there with the Hogs going into this upcoming season. Meanwhile, another SEC team has fired their coach and quickly replaced him with another hire as well, coming from a rival school. We'll check in the Bluegrass State coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. The coaching carousel just spins faster and faster and faster and faster here in 2025.
It doesn't stop at all.
It doesn't stop. It really doesn't stop. Case in point, the Kentucky Wildcats, who I wouldn't say quietly fired their coach, but given the noise that was surrounding the coaching world at the time, it kind of went under the radar when they fired Mark Stoops. we've been talking about this for a really long time, and it felt like James Franklin and Sam Pittman were on the hottest of hottest seats coming into the year, quickly fired. It felt like Mark Stoops was also on the hot seat, but it felt like it just simmered all season long, and then they fired him at the end of the year, but very quickly going to somebody who ended up playing for a rival school to be their new head coach.
You know, I felt like it got to a certain point this year where we were talking about how everyone's on the hot seat, but if you fire everyone, then there's the amount of coaches that were available this cycle just could not fit the amount of availability.
100%.
So, I mean, they were going to just get a ton of money. That's why Lane Kiffin has a ridiculous amount of money for never winning the national championship. Saban fired him before they won the national championship.
Yep.
But when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, you know, Kentucky, man, I don't feel like that's a job that really anyone wants.
Yeah.
I mean, you're overshadowed by the basketball team,
program,
and
yeah.
I mean, even I'd say the baseball program now at this point. And I'm like, man, who is Kentucky gonna get with this coaching cycle? And then I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow, they're gonna hire Will Stein.
Will Stein, yeah.
I mean, goodness. Look, I know he doesn't have head coaching experience here, and he was the Oregon offensive coordinator, and Oregon's gonna let him continue that role all the way through the college football playoff. But this is probably the greatest hire, the most underrated hire, I will say, of this coaching cycle. I think unless Brian Hartline leaves Ohio State, which I will still say, whoever gets Brian Hartline eventually, I know it's more than likely going to be next year.
Right.
You are getting a hidden gem.
Absolutely.
And he is the greatest coordinator right now that is primed to be a head coach. But I think Will Stein is just behind him.
Absolutely. I do too.
This is great.
I do too. And for those that aren't familiar with Will Stein, he comes to Kentucky after being the offensive coordinator. He started his playing career at Louisville. Yeah. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon these past few years, but he started his coaching career, his playing career and his coaching career started in the Bluegrass State there at the other school in Louisville instead of there at Kentucky. I find that dynamic really interesting as well, that his first head coaching job is with the rival school that's down the road in Lexington.
And, you know, he said in his intro, he was like, you know, I grew up going to Kentucky football games. He talked about the Kentucky football games, even though he played at Louisville. And, you know, the timing of this is just so funny because, I mean, it's not funny that Kentucky got absolutely demolished by Louisville this past weekend. And, I mean, it was like that game, honestly, reminded me of the Notre Dame-Arkansas game where it's like, all right, you have to make a change at this point. All of that goodwill that Mark Stoops had built up over the last few weeks, you know, that 3-game win streak. You know, maybe coaching, doing just enough to get him one more year. No, when you lose 41-0 to your rival, I mean, there is no coming back.
There's something that has to change. And it just felt like it was kind of in the tea leaf, so to speak, from all the way to the beginning of the season. And now with Mark Stoops, who was the longest tenured coach in the SEC, that now shifts and now goes to Kirby Smart, who's about to coach in the SEC championship game against the Alabama Crimson Tide. It feels bizarre to say because I just remember him right there hip and hip with Nick Saban leading Alabama to that dynasty, and then now at 10 years in this league, he is the longest tenured head coach. And so it's kind of wild to think, number one, how fast time is flying, but also two, these are very, very short runs here for all these coaches that are in the league, and the fact that 10 years in is the longest tenure is kind of wild.
I mean, it also doesn't shock me, though, because, I mean, this is a conference where you have to win. I mean, it perennially was the powerhouse in college football, and you can somewhat make the argument that, hey, the Big Ten's caught up. They've won the last 2 national titles, and you know, honestly, I hate to say it, they might be primed to win a 3rd straight here. I don't see Ohio State, you know, falling off anytime soon, or Indiana. I mean, that game this weekend is going to be very interesting in Indianapolis. But I mean, you have to win, or else you're gone. And I mean, again, I think I said this yesterday. Some of these coaching hires aren't going to work out. And, I mean, there's probably going to be one that's fired within 2 years. I mean, that's just the nature of the sport. There's only one SEC champion. There's only one national champion. And sometimes it is the same team.
Right.
But, I mean, in some years, they're two different teams, and there's only one team in the SEC that wins the conference.
Right. And I feel like as the field gets bigger, let's just say that it goes from 12 teams to 16 teams, the pressure gets more.
Yep.
Because there's more spots to get into the college football playoff, which would make it more, I think, reasonable to let go of a head coach a little bit earlier if they're not able to make it, given those expectations. And we got a chance to hear from the Kentucky quarterback and Cutter Boley.
Yeah, we just didn't play well enough as a unit, you know. Louisville did a really good job today, and they just outplayed us as a whole, and we just have to be better offensively. Yeah, you know, this is definitely where I want to be. I want to play for Kentucky. Like I said before, we kind of take it on us. You know, that's on us. That's on us as players. I feel like the whole team feels that way. It's on me. You know, we gotta be better as an offense, and I gotta be better as a quarterback.
This actually brings up an interesting wave to me, because this is another former quarterback, an offensive guy that's leading, a young guy, not even 40 years old yet, leading this. When you think about this wave here of college coaches, you think about Lane Kiffin, obviously offensive background. His dad and his mentors, Nick Saban and Pete Carroll, are both defensive guys. But he was the offensive guy, the offensive guru. Auburn's new head coach, Alex Golesh, South Florida. Offensive guy, led that offense to number 4 in the nation in scoring at 40-something points per game. Think about Will Stein, an offensive guy, was the OC, of course, at Oregon, a former quarterback himself, and a player there at Louisville. And you also think about other guys that are in this league that are offensive. I think the front of their mind is offense, and sometimes they'll coach both. I think Summerall's got, he's got obviously a background on both on the offensive side and the defensive side.
That's hard.
I think we are leaning culturally to more younger guys that coach on the offensive side of football, and leaning away from guys like Kirby Smart, veteran tenured guys that are mainly defensive guys. A guy like Mark Stoops was exactly that as well.
Well, I think it also is in part because of the nature of this college football landscape nowadays with NIL and everything. I mean, some people, let's just put it very bluntly, they don't want to change. Dabo Swinney doesn't want to change. Mike Gundy didn't want to change, and that was eventually his downfall. But I think, Will Stein, before he was at Oregon, he was at UTSA, and he did a really fine job there over in San Antonio. But, I mean, you look at some of the numbers this year, 3rd in the Big Ten in total yards per game, 38.2 points per game, 2nd in the Big Ten. But there at the bottom, he developed Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel into, some of the better quarterbacks that we've seen here. And, I mean, Oregon has become QBU nowadays.
It has. Whether they're coming in via the transfer portal, or whether they're coming in like Bo Nix did, or they're just coming in straight up. Those are two guys that are in the NFL. Say what you want to about Dylan Gabriel, but right now Bo Nix has his team, right there at the top of the ACC. You look shocked.
Yeah, I didn't mean to give you that much of a reaction, but this is outside the SEC here.
Okay.
Some of the news was about, who is Penn State going to hire, and Kalani Sitake informing people that he's going to stay at BYU.
Wow. So
Penn State gets this head start on everybody by firing James Franklin.
Yes.
And then they're left with who?
Wow, hang on a second. So Sitake, for those that aren't familiar, Sitake is the coach at BYU. And wow. And
a lot of talk now has been about, Crumble, their Crumble Cookie CEO is one of the big donors at BYU. I mean, he had to. Let me tell you, BYU rests on all these cookies being sold at this point, because he had to give them a nice amount of money. But this one also, to me, and I don't mean to get off track by any means, but this one was never really made any sense to me. I mean, he has 0 East Coast ties, so I don't know why he would leave and go all the way out here. But.
Me too. And it looks like BYU is probably easier place to win and get your team into the college football playoff. They're nestled in the Big 12. That's no really disrespect to that league, but it just feels like it's easier to get there. And it looks like kind of like a James Franklin move. Like, hey, I will rather stay where it's easier than to go into that crazy melting pot. And one of the things we talked about earlier, I had this conversation earlier today with one of our coworkers about the Auburn job or about the Alabama job and the pressure that comes with it. Every coach in America just saw what happened to James Franklin. A year ago, he's in the college football playoff. And then a year later, 6 games into the season, he doesn't have a job. He was 3-3, and they fired him. And to me, it just seems like a lot of coaches see that and they're like, "Hey, do you really want to leave where you are to go there?"
And Kalen DeBoer is not leaving Alabama.
No.
I don't know why we keep talking about this.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me that this is still going around. Kalen DeBoer is not leaving Alabama to go to Penn State. That just makes zero sense to me.
It makes no sense, and I'd be beyond shocked if he even entertained it.
Here's the thing: when Penn State fired James Franklin, I felt like that was a knee-jerk reaction to, oh my goodness, we just lost 3 straight games. We're at 3-3. We can't even win the games that we're supposed to.
And it was the UCLA game. I think that was a nail in the coffin.
Why they fired him made zero sense. I mean, from an emotional standpoint, I get it. But a recruiting standpoint, they have 0 commits for next year lined up. They have one of the worst recruiting classes for next year. I mean, I never thought it was the right decision to fire James Franklin, and now you're in panic mode because it's the early signing period
literally
this week.
Tomorrow,
and no one knows who your head coach is going to be. I mean, Brian Hartline.
Yeah.
You know, if you can give him some money. I mean, you already had Jim Knowles, who kind of tanked your season. You just took him from Ohio State. Why don't you take Brian Hartline too?
We'll see what Penn State does there, but what kind of shocking developments there. Penn State way, as a former SEC coach, James Franklin was fired. He's now at Virginia Tech, and Penn State still looking for a new head coach in this crazy coaching carousel world. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Waco, Texas, and check in with our good buddy Parker Reed. Stay with us. We are back here on Southeast Sports Plus. Happy to be joined by our good friend Parker Ream. And Parker, we have talked a lot about this Texas A&M football team. I want to dive very quickly about what happened on Saturday against the Texas Longhorns, or this weekend against the Texas Longhorns. It was a game that I eerily felt that I think a lot of people thought, Texas is playing well enough to be able to win this football game and kind of derail the perfect season overall. What did you make of what you saw there in Austin, and just kind of where the team stands now that the regular season is complete?
I honestly didn't even notice it until we hopped on this video call, but I got a burnt orange tie on today.
Oh, wow.
So that I'm not trying to make a statement.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just realized that. Not my choice. Somebody, our main anchor picked it. But really just the takeaways from this game, I think for the second straight year, Texas had the best game plan possible for this Texas A&M team. And Marcel Reed even talked just as much post-game about it, is they just dropped 7 or 8 in coverage and took away any of those opportunities. That was a pretty cool drone show as well that we're showing right now. They took away a lot of those opportunities downfield that A&M has been used to hitting in the early season with Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver and Ashton Bethel-Roman. I mean, they didn't have that many long throws, the long touchdown passes. It was really Marcel Reed getting it done with his legs and taking away the run game. The run game wasn't as smooth for the Aggies as it has been, and that's really the biggest formula to their success. So just a good game plan for Texas. I think they executed it well, and whether they're Aggie killers, I guess that's what you could call them, but they certainly did that on Friday night. But a great game, awesome game to be a part of.
Parker, I think it was this time last Tuesday that we talked about after the Samford game. You know, Texas A&M didn't really look great once Marcel Reed was out of the game. And, you know, I was holding my breath early in the game when he went down with the ankle injury. How is he feeling? Is he feeling good? I think it's going to help that Texas A&M isn't actually playing in the SEC championship game, and he'll have some more time to rest. But what did you make of his play after the ankle injury?
So he was actually warming up right in front of me after that, kind of testing out his knee, and I took a video and put that out immediately because I knew, you know, people would want to know about that. But it looked like he was actually grasping at his knee.
Okay.
So his left knee, they were tending to his left knee that entire time. At no point during that entire interaction with the trainers did they go to his ankle. But I did see a lot of people saying that it was his ankle. So I'm assuming that we'll get an answer. We didn't get to talk to Coach Elko this week. Obviously, they're probably taking a week off and regrouping after that loss. But I did think that it did hinder him a little bit. And that maybe just from a confidence standpoint, he had to come out. Really a drive killer, too. They were down in the red zone, 3rd down, and they didn't have the confidence to throw it with their backup quarterback, Miles O'Neill. So they just kind of run a little jet sweep there and call it a day. And I just think that's not that definitely hindered the momentum for the Aggies. But also, he just didn't have his best day. He didn't have his best stuff against the Longhorns really for the second straight year, which was a little disappointing, I think, in College Station, given how he's played all season long.
Absolutely. I know no coach roots for losses. And there was a time where Nick Saban's best teams were the ones, not the ones that went undefeated. It was the teams that lost the game, and then you saw that edge. You saw something come back with the football team, and they looked dangerous after that one loss. Do you think that there is something here after this loss to Texas where it actually helps reinforce Mike Elko's message about what he wants this team to be and then some of the ways that they'll need to improve and get better? Because sometimes I think you can kind of lull yourself to sleep with an undefeated mark, and maybe sometimes these losses actually do help despite the fact that kept them out of Atlanta.
Yeah, it's kind of that monkey off your back, just to finally get that loss out of the way. And yeah, it sucks to have that happen at the end of the season once again with a shot to go to the SEC championship and just not getting that job done. And I think that's something that Texas A&M, that is the pillar that they have to knock down, and they just haven't been able to get it done these past 2 years. I think that they've done a good job to this point. But I also do think that it gives them some less pressure heading into that if they get selected, which they should probably be in the college football playoff. I know that's going to be a heated topic of discussion these next couple of weeks, whether it's Texas A&M, whether it's Notre Dame, Miami, Texas. Somebody's going to be mad. But if that happens in College Station where they get left out, I don't know that the College Football Playoff Committee will survive. I think the entire force of Aggie Land is going to be sicked on them if they leave them out.
Well, I mean, Parker, I think it definitely helps that Hunter Yurachek, being an SEC guy, is the chair.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure he'll put in the goodwill, but I don't see a scenario where Texas A&M is left out. I mean, if anything, it's definitely going to be Texas with that third loss, and it's probably going to be the Florida. But talking about Texas this year, I mean, when we were talking with Roger Wallace the whole year, he was talking about, man, the Longhorns have zero resemblance of a run game. And then Trey Wisner just channels his 2024 self against Texas A&M and just runs all over the Aggies. Are you concerned now? We'll talk hypothetically because Texas A&M should be in the playoff. Are you a little bit concerned now that they've actually played a SEC opponent that is above the midway point in the conference and they just weren't able to get it done?
Well, I think that's the doubts that a lot of people had over Texas A&M, was that they haven't played. And even right now, their resume does not stack up very well because the teams that they did play, while they may have looked good at the time and been ranked pretty high at the time, they didn't end up that way. And I think that's something that's caused a little fuss with how people view Texas A&M now. Is they did play a Texas team that was preseason number 1, went in, has a decent resume, but obviously that loss to Florida really causes some concern. And then the 20-point loss to Georgia as well, which Texas fans will say that they're maybe overlooking them because of that Ohio State loss. But I think it has more to do with that Florida loss. I think that they just got to put this game behind them. And as fair weather as it is to say that, I think it's probably just one of those games where, yes, it would have been great to go to the SEC championship, but I also think the Aggies knew they were in the playoff either way. And maybe they took the foot off the gas a little bit, which is ridiculous to say in the Lone Star Showdown. But 11-0 entering that game, you pretty much are locked for the postseason. Maybe if they had lost to South Carolina, that game would have meant a little bit more. And I think it's not a great look, I'll tell you that much, to lose to Texas, the one team that really could have just thrown all that doubt out the window, because people certainly have their doubts in the maroon and white.
For sure. Mike Elko has been talking a lot about getting the people to believe in this football team and not believe the 8-4 hype. Hey, here's Coach after the game.
We didn't handle the atmosphere well enough. Obviously that's what makes this league challenging, is when you play night games in this atmosphere. It puts a lot of stress on you. We have to handle it better. You can't be successful with the penalties that we had, but I think that's where a lot of that came from. We just did not handle the atmosphere well enough. No, I mean we had two early on that were bad rush lanes. Those were scrambles. The last one was a designed run. I think those were the three runs he had on the night, I thought. So the last one was obviously a good play call by them, and we didn't execute it the right way. I thought we corrected the two cage issues that we had early on, and started spying them a little bit more. I thought that was really effective, and then it just felt like in the second half we had a hard time getting them into third down because we just weren't doing the things we needed to do to get ahead of the chains.
Parker, the latest college football playoff committee rankings will be out tonight. Where do you expect this Texas A&M team to fall, and what do you think that the Aggies, as far as in that locker room with Coach Elko, that coaching staff, where do you think that they believe they are after the 12 games?
I think they should be pretty far up, and realistically, the resume is only as good as what your schedule. You only play the people that are on your schedule. You don't really control that. I mean, I guess you control the non-conference schedule, but the SEC schedule is locked in. That's not something that they can control, and I think that's something that's been holding them back. So I think they still think they're one of the best teams in the country, and realistically, 11 games, they sure looked like it. And then the one game that they didn't was this past week. So I would assume, I think I've been seeing that they've been checking in around 7, at least in terms of predictions. I think that's a fair assessment. You can't, I mean, clearly you're not going to get the automatic qualifier. You're not going to get one of those top 4 seeds. So we're looking at a playoff game at Kyle Field. I did see a projection of Notre Dame playing Texas A&M at Kyle Field this time.
Wow, that'd be interesting.
So Notre Dame at 10 and then Texas A&M at 7.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a really interesting game, obviously, given how the last one ended in South Bend. And then when Notre Dame came to Texas A&M 2 years ago and took down the Aggies in that season opener. So I think that, at least storyline-wise, that would be great. But we'll ultimately see. I am interested, especially with those teams on the bubbles, kind of like I talked about earlier, just to see how the committee really ranks this, because there's going to be some teams that are not too pleased that they were left out.
I could definitely see that. Let's flip it over to basketball now. One of the interesting storylines going into this basketball season were some of the new coaches coming into this league. Of course, you had Sean Miller there in Austin, but also Bucky McMillan there in Aggie land. Where does this team stack up? I know football has kind of sucked a lot of the oxygen out of the room, so to speak, but just because the way the football team has been playing. But what are some of the progress and some of the markers that you've seen with this hoops team as they get ready for another big game here in the ACC SEC?
Yeah, volleyball's definitely taking a center stage at Reed Arena too. The Aggies are hosting NCAA tournaments on Friday, starting Friday. So I think, but obviously we're gonna get into basketball season. It's going to be SEC play is going to be here. Geez, before we know it, maybe in a couple of weeks. So and that's just unbelievable to say. But like you said, it's kind of football. Football starts to come to a close, and right when that does, then it's conference play and things really get interesting in college basketball. And I think for Bucky McMillan so far, the team has performed about as well as people expected. They've had their ups, they've had their downs, and but a big win against Florida State, pretty much for a home game for Florida State. Neutral site in Tampa, but still, in the state of Florida, they really took it to a Seminoles team that almost took down Florida. And I think that's a good stepping stone for this team pretty early on. And I'm actually a pretty decent Florida State fan. My family went there. So, that was kind of a who do I want to win kind of scenario. But I thought great win for Bucky McMillan, great win for the Texas A&M Aggies. And at least in the non-conference slate so far, they performed maybe better than expectations in Aggie land, and I think that's a great stepping stone for what's to come in conference.
Absolutely. You mentioned that Florida State basketball game, Bucky McMillan, after the game against the Seminoles.
Yeah, we want to be aggressive, use our depth. We are a pressure team that gets up and pressures. But, hey, we grew that lead out there. We were able to run our zone, and we were good in our zone, and we were able to go zone and zone to man, which teams I've coached in the past do a lot of. We've just been unable to do it because we hadn't had our guys together. To see them execute it was really good versus a really good shooting team. Look, I'll say this, too. We won by a wide margin. They shoot a lot of threes like we do. And, look, you miss 5 or 6 threes, they make 5 of those. That game can be totally different and tight. And that's just the nature of basketball in 2025. A lot of variance basketball. I've always said since the start that we're going to have games we look unbeatable, and then there's going to be games we may never win again. And tonight was one of those nights where we looked like the first.
Parker, spinning it forward to tonight here, I think this is a bit of an interesting matchup between Texas A&M and Pittsburgh, because you could make the argument that they're two teams that have a lot alike, kind of early season struggles-ish, so to speak. But, I mean, Texas A&M got that nice win over Florida State, and Pittsburgh's trying to find an identity here this year. What are you looking forward to the most about tonight's game?
I think it's just whether Texas A&M can get off to a fast start. If you look at their losses, that's what did not happen. And if they don't get off to a fast start, and that's pretty typical, I think, in a Bucky McMillan system. In Buckyball, if the threes aren't falling, it's kind of live or die by the threes. So I think if they can get off to a fast start, they'll have a good chance tonight. But sort of playing against these close to tournament teams, or those teams that might be on the bubble entering the NCAA tournament, that's what's really going to prepare them for one of the toughest conferences in the country. And I think this is one of those games that does just that. It might not be the most glamorous game on the schedule, but certainly a team that you really can't take lightly. So I am interested to see how they perform. I think they're pretty evenly matched teams. But at the end of the day, I do think the Aggies have maybe a more talented roster. So I think they should pull this one out tonight. But again, anything can happen on any given night in college basketball.
That's exactly right. The Aggies are a slim favorite in that one. And Parker, you just mentioned it. They went to a neutral site game, so they're used to being able to pack up their bags, go on the road, a foreign gym, and be able to go out and execute the way they want to. We'll see if they can do it again tonight against the Pitt Panthers. Parker, thank you so much for your time, man. I know you're really busy this time of year.
No, don't worry about it. Always happy to join you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Parker Ream joining us from Waco, Texas. Obviously a lot to digest there. And I think that all eyes in Waco will be right there on that college football playoff committee just to see where this team is seated, because they can go a long way with no more games left to play.
Look, they are a college football playoff team. And if they do get left out, it would be a travesty to the sport. But I'm looking forward to basketball tonight. I know Nick Saban talked about Jordan Hare being a little bit haunted.
Yeah.
I think the Peterson Event Center is also a little bit haunted. Nice. I've seen some of the backyard brawls not go West Virginia's way in the Peterson Event Center. But I will say my all-time favorite basketball moment happened there. So maybe it's not too haunted.
Nice.
The Tyler Ennis half-court shot when Syracuse was still #1 in the country. Back when Syracuse actually knew how to shoot free throws and actually play basketball. But that's besides the point.
Well, Syracuse, Pitt, Texas A&M, Wake Forest, all these teams will be in action in the ACC-SEC matchup. We will close our show with a preview of the hardwood coming up next. Lots of news as we close up shop here on this Tuesday. We talked yesterday about Alex Golesh, formally introduced to Auburn and in the football program there, the 33rd head coach. Word out today that DJ Durkin, the Auburn defensive coordinator and the interim head coach when Hugh Freeze was fired, will remain on with the Auburn Tigers under Golesh. They had some talks and some meetings right after the news came out. I know this is music to Auburn's fans' ears.
Yes, so Auburn head football coach Alex Golesh just released a statement saying, choosing to keep DJ on our staff was an easy call. Our relationship goes back more than 20 years to our roots in Ohio. We have worked with some of the same men, and we've competed against each other in this great league. We are fortunate to retain one of the top defensive minds in college football here on the Plains. So that is big for Auburn. Yeah. I think, you know, if they let DJ Durkin walk, that was going to be a mistake.
Absolutely.
So I think it's great that they are having him back, and I'd expect Auburn to have another elite defense next year.
Yeah, absolutely. You have kind of the captain of your offense, the captain of your defense, right there, and you get to keep the recruiting there in place. Of course, National Signing Day is coming up tomorrow. DJ Durkin was a heavy recruiter for a lot of the guys here in the class of 2026, so to be able to keep him on board, it has to feel good for roster retention moving forward. So great news there, and a great catch there towards the end of the show here. Patrick, coming up tonight, lots of great basketball here, and some interesting matchups in the ACC-SEC Challenge.
Yeah, starting off with the Battle of the Orange, we've got Tennessee number 13 Volunteers taking on Syracuse Orange up in Syracuse, New York at the JMA Wireless Dome. Virginia Tech facing South Carolina, Oklahoma taking on Wake Forest, and Texas A&M, we just talked with Parker Ream, facing the Pitt Panthers. Moving right along here, a great top 15 matchup between Florida and Duke at Cameron Indoor. Miami will face Ole Miss there in Oxford. Georgia taking on Florida State, and Mizzou going up to South Bend, and then capping it off with another great matchup. Monster. Number 16, North Carolina taking on number 18, Kentucky at 8:30 Central tonight.
Oh, well, the ACC and SEC knew exactly what they were doing when they put these matchups together. This is day one, of course. So coming up tomorrow, you have Auburn, Alabama, and a bunch of other teams there on the block. I teased this in the overreactions earlier, saying that I tell you which SEC teams I thought would win in this bad boy.
All right, here we go.
Here are games for tonight. I like Tennessee. I don't know if they can cover the 7.5. But I like Tennessee to win a close game, as we were talking about earlier with Sam Granville. Like them in that matchup.
Look, I have to say, you know, I have to put my fandom aside here. Tennessee's going to win this game by double digits. It's just it's going to come down to the free throws. Syracuse does a great job of getting to the line, but it's just shocking the amount of free throws that you actually miss. I mean, you beat Houston,
right?
If you make some free throws. And I think the one-off bad half against Iowa State was eye-opening. I think it was kind of an emotional letdown because, I mean, you had an opportunity against Houston to close it out. You couldn't do it. You hung around with Kansas the next day, just couldn't get it done. And then, I mean, at that point, you're just emotionally tired. You're hanging around with Iowa State, and then they just rip off a huge run.
Let me ask you this, though. Does it get better that they're in their own gym? In your opinion, is it shoot up a tick being comfortable?
Yeah, but it's just one of the shocking things. And if you watch the game tonight, you'll see this. Syracuse doesn't run any offensive sets unless they just change something in the last week, where they just magically start running offensive sets. I just don't see it.
I can see that.
They have the talent, but they don't play together.
Right. Yeah. No, I can see that. Next up is Wake Forest, Oklahoma. This is the one I'll go against the SEC. I think Wake Forest gets it done.
Yeah, I just don't like. It's not that I don't like Oklahoma this year, but it's just Wake Forest really, it seems like there's something building there in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, defending national champion Florida Gators against Duke and Cameron Indoor.
Too much for Florida to handle. Duke wins this
I think Cam Boozer is going to have a night. I like Duke there in that matchup as well. Ole Miss, the Rebs, hosting Miami. Interesting matchup.
I think 2.5 is a little bit interesting. I think Ole Miss wins this by a good margin. I mean, Miami, ever since Jim Larinaga stepped down, I mean, they've been trying to catch up to that Final Four run. I think Ole Miss wins this by double digits.
I was so surprised at this line. I thought Miami would be the favorite. Because Ole Miss is the favorite, I think maybe people want to take Miami, so I think I'm going Ole Miss there as well. And the big one, the Heels and the Cats.
UNC wins this one. Kentucky just hasn't really shown anything to me in these big games for me to take them. I just don't see it.
I see the magic of Rupp Arena